And a very pleasant good morning. Here we are back in the studio. This is Garden America, your garden buddies. I'm Brian Main. Everybody's here today. John Bagnasco, Tiger Palafox. It is a pleasure to be here as we continue to endure the stifling heat in many areas of California, especially here in Southern California. Today, great show lined up, great guest. Everything's great coming out of the chute. Tiger, you're looking great. How about that?
Oh, I like that.
I like
Way
that
to go.
segue.
Yeah, you've been thinking about that all morning, huh?
Actually, it just came to me.
Really?
Well, I was,
Impressive.
This is all ad-lib.
That was great.
Now, see, if I was reading cue cards, I'd be looking off to the right and would be talking like that. But I stare straight into the camera.
Because you can do it all from your own brain.
It's all
you don't
right
need
there.
cue cards, right?
Now, ask me in 2 hours how I feel after this show. We hope everybody's had a good week, and thank you for joining us, spending part of your weekend with us. Again, our guest today, Tiger, will be talking about what? Her name is Sarah?
Sarah Chase Shaw. And there's a book that she helped create called On the Roof of the Rocky Mountains, The Botanical Legacy of Betty Ford Alpine Gardens. And it's gardens up in Vail, Colorado. And we're going to be talking about what inspired her to get involved with this project and also the gardens themselves.
All right, that's the tease for today as far as the guest is concerned. But, of course, whatever your questions or comments are, make sure you let us know. Post them on our Facebook page. Next, let's see. My show prep says go to John Bagnasco. Time to go to John.
Cool.
It says right here. So, John, your mic is hot. You're ready to go.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead. We've got answers.
If you went to the Facebook page of Garden America, how would you find today's show?
Well,
Just theoretically.
Well, theoretically, if somebody's having a problem, I would first of all refresh the page.
Okay, let me try that.
And then I would scroll down until you see what we're wearing today. Because I know a lot of people, it can be confusing. You scroll down and you see the various shows, past shows, that are posted, but we're not wearing the same thing as we're wearing today. So maybe that would be a clue, John. I've got the blue shirt going. Tiger's got, what color is that, Tiger?
Kind of a teal green.
Teal green.
Yeah.
And you've got the white shirt today, John.
Yeah. And the title of our show is Alpine Gardening today.
Alpine Gardening, the title. Very important.
Would you
that
ever
was
live?
a great tip. It works.
It works. See, when in doubt, refresh.
Would you love to live in the mountains? Vail, Colorado, up there,
No.
high elevation.
Too cold.
Part-time.
Part-time?
Yeah,
Good-
if I had a
Good
place
place
up there.
to visit.
Yeah.
Right.
But if I had a cabin up there or something,
Yeah.
part-time, yeah. I lived in Flagstaff, Arizona when I went to college.
Yeah.
And that's up in the mountains. That's
Yeah.
snow.
Trees.
Actually, it's higher than Denver. It's more than a mile high. It's like 7,000 feet.
Oh, wow.
And there's snow skiing there. Grand Canyon's 80 miles north.
Yep.
So I like that
Arizona's
environment.
right down the street.
Arizona, Phoenix, 2 hours.
Arizona.
What's that?
Arizona.
Oh, Arizona?
You didn't go to Arizona? Was that not around when you were there?
What's Arizona?
I have no idea.
It's a zoo that you drive through, and you stay in your car, but they just have wild animals roaming
Where
as
is
you
that?
drive
What state?
in Arizona.
Oh.
By Flagstaff.
Like Lion Country Safari?
Do you get to stay in your car and
That goes back to the 70s, John.
Oh, Mission Viejo.
Yeah, Mission Viejo.
and you drove through this park
Yeah,
and
there
you would
were
have animals?
Lions would jump on your car.
Yeah, so that's like Arizona
Yeah.
because you just drive through and they have their animals just in these areas, and you.
Now, if you want to see something funny, go on YouTube, and there's a lot of these parks that do the same thing where people drive through, and these people with less than intelligent behavior will keep their windows rolled down, and they show lions coming up and trying to claw at people and trying to get in there.
Yeah.
People get out of the car to take pictures.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons there's no Lion Country Safari anymore.
Yeah, not a
Right.
good idea. But how did we get on that?
We were talking about if you would live
Oh, yes,
in an alpine area.
and would I want a lion as a pet? I
Yeah.
think that's how you set that up.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, no guessing what John's shirt is today as far as the color. We know that's a white shirt.
Yeah.
We were talking during the break about how last week, was it last week?
The shirt?
Yeah.
Yeah, last week.
Was a.
You can scroll down on the Facebook page and you'll see last week's show.
I think I was just in last week's show. But one of our listeners, Patty from San Marcos, sent me the Pantone colors, and turns out the shirt was persimmon orange.
Which is what you stated last week.
Well, I said persimmon. You
Right.
said orange.
So it's a in between.
Kind of feel like it's almost like Brian's hat today too.
Yeah.
It's kind of a persimmon.
Yeah.
Probably
San,
was
San Diego
orange.
Gulls hat, 1966.
Persimmon orange.
But when you watched it on Facebook, it looked a lot more orange. But then in person, persimmon, right?
Persimmon orange.
Persimmon orange. All right.
Hey, Susie says that she's in the White Mountains of Arizona.
White Mountains.
Right.
Where's that
She's
at?
near Sholo.
Yeah,
Oh.
Shola's northern Arizona, I believe.
Right, in a log cabin, and she said the monsoons made for a great garden this year after
Oh,
a
man.
couple dry years that they had.
So here's what happens in the summertime in Flagstaff in northern Arizona. It usually rains once a day. Monsoon comes in, dumps rain about 30 minutes, moves on. Same thing every day in the summertime.
Really?
And of course, in the wintertime, it's freezing, lots of snow. You know, it's funny. You tell people, I went to school in Arizona, lots of snow. They look
Yeah.
at you.
Lots of rain,
What do you
lots
mean,
of
lots
snow?
of snow? The difference between southern Arizona, Phoenix, driving north into Flagstaff, it's two different worlds. Geographically, it changes dramatically. You're in the woods, trees, forests, snow, bears.
Now, what town is bigger, Sholo or Concho?
That I don't know. I'm going to say maybe Sholo. I'm guessing.
Really?
I'm guessing.
Because we used
Susie
to.
can tell us if she's listening or
Oh,
watching.
all right. Because both those areas, I believe, are supposed to have some of the cleanest air in the United States.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Nice.
Not only that, in Flagstaff, you can drink the water right out of the tap, and it tastes as good as any water.
It's just river water kind of a thing.
Exactly. That's so funny when I watch YouTube videos or I watch somebody getting a drink of water out of the sink, knowing how bad our water is, makes me cringe.
Rochelle's
Oh.
in Lake Tahoe today.
Ooh,
Hey, good for you, Rochelle.
that's another
I like their
nice
lifestyle.
Alpine area.
And they're
as
tuned
well.
in. That's the best part. You go on the road, you
Yeah.
take us with you.
There you go.
Doesn't matter where
we,
you
we
are.
try to make it easy for our listeners.
I've never been to Lake Tahoe.
Really?
Oh,
I
you
don't
gotta-
think so.
John,
man.
what a beautiful
Yeah.
area.
Trees right down to the
Yep,
river,
right
the lake's
down to right down to
edge.
the lake.
You know,
It's a deep
crystal,
lake too, isn't it?
crystal
right?
blue, really deep.
Yeah, it's a very ancient old lake.
Yeah.
Very deep.
Yeah.
California on one side, Nevada on the other side.
What do you mean by ancient? What's an
Thousands
ancient
of years.
lake?
Thousands of years.
Aren't most lakes thousands of years?
No, there's a couple lakes that are only a few years old if it's a reservoir.
Yeah.
But that would be a reservoir, not a lake.
What? There's Lake Jennings, and that's a reservoir.
He's right. And not all
I
ancient
guess
lakes are deep.
Lake Jennings is easier to say than Reservoir Jennings.
Reservoir.
If I had a reservoir, I'd call it dogs.
Spell reservoir for us.
If I had a reservoir, I'd call it.
Spell reservoir.
R-E-S,
Mhm.
and then you spell the rest.
I know there's a V and an R, right?
O-I-R.
V
It ends
and
in
an
O.
R.
Yeah.
Reservoir.
Oh.
It's French, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reservoir.
Like
Au
Detroit.
revoir. Like what?
Detroit.
Yeah, de toi. Un, deux, trois, quatre, cinq, six, sept, huit, neuf, dix. 11, 12, 14.
Now you're letting your hockey past
My
come
French?
forth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, my friend.
playing
Oh.
back in Montreal.
Anyway, I guess, should we talk gardening and horticulture and landscaping
Oh.
today?
Yes.
What time's the show start?
19 minutes ago.
How much time?
I'm
do I
sorry,
have?
15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
We've got to get John's quote of the week. I think that's what he was referring to. Now, if you got the newsletter or you're on our Facebook page, you can see the newsletter. Don't let those big lips on the pepper startle you. They kind of jump out at you.
Yeah, you know, every now and then you see a picture of a vegetable that resembles something odd, and I don't know if I've ever seen a pepper
With lips?
with lips before.
When I pulled it off, I said, I got to keep this. How long can we keep this, alive?
How long did you lacquer it to try to keep it forever?
We should have. I took a lot of pictures. John's
Yeah.
got it in the newsletter.
You know, peppers are one of those plants too that when you harvesting tomatoes, you kind of there's some weird ones, but
Right.
peppers do come out weird
Right.
looking. It's hard to get. When you look at the grocery store and you see those bell peppers, there was a lot of them that they threw
Yeah,
away
but that
to
didn't make the
get
cut.
those. Yeah, to get those bell peppers. Yeah.
Oh, ready for the quote of the week?
Yeah, we've got about a minute to go until our first
Okay,
break.
it's
John,
from
go right ahead.
your buddy Luther Burbank.
Oh, Luther.
Yeah,
Now, what was his nickname? Was it Louis? They call him Louis?
I don't know.
I think Louis Burbank.
I think they called him Mr. Burbank.
All right, we'll go with that.
He was well respected. As a matter of fact, who was it? Henry Ford and Thomas Edison.
They hung out together.
Well, they made a trip to visit him because they admired him
Yeah,
so much.
I think there's a picture someplace
Yeah,
of all three of them together.
having a picnic. Anyway, he said, in the span of my own lifetime, I observed such wondrous progress in plant evolution that I look forward optimistically to a healthy, happy world as soon as its children are taught the principles of simple and rational living.
I think we need a lot of that today.
Yeah.
Simple and rational living.
Yeah.
Now, he was, what years did he live, John? What was his circa?
Turn of the last century.
Okay. Luther Burbank.
Yeah.
And you did not know him personally, right?
No, but I had some of his roses. You know, he was a world-renowned breeder. And
We've got to take a break. I'm sorry, John. I shouldn't have set you up like that. When we come back, though, John's going to finish
I'm speechless.
Luther Burbank. We're going to get to our guest. A lot happening. Welcome to Garden America. Tiger Palafox, John Bagnasco. I'm Brian Main. We're going to take a break on Biz Talk Radio and Facebook Live. Okay, just like that, we are back here on Biz Talk Radio, Facebook Live. Our guest is lined up and ready to go. And again, any questions with anything you hear this morning, those on Facebook Live, we do urge you, I should say, to post them, whether it's a question or a comment on our Facebook page. And with that said, I'm going to toss over to Tiger Palafox.
Yeah, this morning joining us is Sarah Chase Shaw, the author of On the Roof of the Rocky Mountains, a book about the botanical legacy of the Betty Ford Alpine Gardens. And she is a landscape architect, author, and just enthusiast of gardens. Sarah, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, you're located up there in Vail, Colorado, right?
I actually live about 20 minutes outside of Aspen, but very close to Vail.
Okay. And so, you live this book. That is your region. That's where you live. This is the kind of landscape that you're surrounded by. And, before we brought you on this morning, we were just talking about if we would ever live up there. And, being San Diego guys, I think it's kind of a stretch for us. But what a beautiful area. And your book portrays the area so magnificently with the different colors and textures of the foliage. And, it had to be a lot of fun to be able to get in there and take a look at these gardens, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is a very special place, the Betty Ford Alpine Gardens, but it is truly a reflection of the environment around us here in Colorado and in the Intermountain West. And the great thing about the book is that you don't have to tackle a 14er to understand what the alpine environment is about. You can take a nice stroll through the gardens and get that same sense.
Now, let's share with our listeners Alpine Garden. What is that term? I mean, are we talking because of the temperatures? Are we talking the altitude? Why do you use the term Alpine Garden?
Oh, that's a really good question, and it's basically all of the above. But the alpine environment. So succinctly, it's the ecosystem on mountaintops and tundra that is too harsh for trees to survive. So anything above tree line or at a place where trees just can't grow would be considered alpine. And, interestingly, it's the most widespread ecosystem in the world, and it does not discriminate by hemisphere. So there's, alpine environments in South America, New Zealand, South Africa, and, of course, all across the northern hemisphere. The gardens itself focuses primarily on the ecosystems that we see in the Rocky Mountains, but there are also demonstration gardens from from the European Alps, from South Africa, from the Caucasus, which is the area around Turkey, the Himalayas. So it's really a very diverse landscape that extends from sea level to 26,000 feet and supports over 10,000 species of plants. And I'll give you a little statistic. Approximately 15% of the world's total land surface area is considered alpine, and just 3% of it exists above tree line.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty diverse. So you might, everybody thinks about alpine as gentians and edelweiss in Switzerland and Austria, but in fact, it's bulbs, it's poppies, it's all these exotics. It's even red hot pokers from South Africa.
Yeah, no, and without leading too much into what we're going to be talking about more, but there's succulents involved in it. You guys have a whole section, which was surprising to see, on different succulents for that area as well. And it's funny you mentioned that, and that is so true. Here in San Diego, we consider ourselves to be a Mediterranean climate. In it's funny because we consider our climate to be Mediterranean, but in reality it is just, I don't know, West Coast kind of climate, but we call ourselves Mediterranean because we are right there in line with, the Mediterranean areas.
You're talking about
in
the
Europe.
latitude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is alpine gardens, almost no matter where they are, northern, southern hemisphere, they're kind of consistent like landscapes in all those regions because of just like what you say, the altitude, the temperatures, all of that. So, you might have some of the same plants in completely different continents as well, but they do well in all those regions because of what they're associated with. So that's kind of neat to think that you can pull plants from all over the world that would do well in your climate, right?
Right. I mean, I think what distinguishes alpine plants is their ability to sort of exist in places where nothing else can grow. So they've adapted strategically to these very harsh conditions of, very icy cold winds, sometimes no snow cover. So they have deep roots. They're low and spreading, mounding as opposed to, growing much above 6 inches above the ground. So they, that is a distinguishing factor for true alpine plants. Now, of course, some of the ones that we can talk about are a little different from that, but that.
So tell us a little bit about the Betty Ford Alpine Garden, because it has a really neat story that kind of goes along with it. This was a community effort to develop this garden, right?
Yes. So it was probably 35 years ago, early 80s. That was probably more than 35 years ago. But there was a group of people, a group of philanthropists and locals who kind of got together and said, we'd like to develop a botanic garden that shows people what they can grow at 8,000 feet in the Rocky Mountains. And for them, it was really part and parcel. A lot of people were moving in from other places where clearly things grew more easily. And this group of people wanted to sort of educate visitors and new residents of the valley that they could grow more than the 3 Ps. And those Ps are petunias, poppies, and pansies, sort of the great things that grow in pots forever. And they really, they started out with a very small plot of land that the town of Vail gave them and supported them with. And slowly they grew over time into what, it's a 5-acre park now, 5-acre botanic garden next to a big park that really has grown incrementally over the last 35 years. But one of the other important things was at the time when these folks had their visions was also the time when Vail was sort of transitioning from being a winter ski resort to a 4-season international destination. So summer visitation and summer activities became very important for its future survival. And so the botanic gardens were a big part of its development. And anyone who's been to Vail, I think probably remembers the floral displays first and foremost that just inundate Vail Village during the summer. I mean, that's kind of the welcome mat that Vail throws out there.
Hey, Sarah, we're going to have to take a break real quick. When we get back, we'll continue talking with Sarah Chase Shaw and the On the Roof of the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Didn't mean to catch you off, but we have to stay on time for the network here, so we will come back, obviously. Any questions, comments for Sarah here? Vail, Colorado, John Begnesco, Brian Main, Tiger Palafox. Post those questions, those comments on our Facebook page. Going to take a break. Messages coming up from Biz Talk Radio. This is Garden America. Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for joining us, spending part of your Saturday morning with us here on Garden America. I guess in some cases, Saturday afternoon. We are back again. Those of you on Facebook, Facebook Live, questions, comments, whatever direction you want to go. I do see a question popping up. But Tiger, back to you and Sarah.
Yeah, so we're talking with Sarah Chase Shaw this morning. Before the break, Sarah, you were just describing how the Betty Ford Alpine Garden there in Vail, Colorado, has kind of been an important part of Vail being a Four Seasons area, not just a winter space for people to go. And, just to kind of paint a little bit of a picture, one of the images in the book is this entrance to the garden with a gate. And it's got to be taken at the most perfect time, Sarah, where you've got red foliage of a tree, yellow foliage of a tree, you've got a grayish blue of a cedar, you've got a deep green of another pine, and then just so much contrast in there, and it's just so spectacular. I'm sure that every time you go to that garden, no matter, if it's in the winter or summer, there's probably some really neat things happening, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think, in the deep of winter, you can take a snowshoe tour and learn about, who's actually living under the 3 and 4 feet of snow that pile up in the gardens, because of course, it's not just plants that live in the gardens. In the spring, as soon as the snow melts, which could be, mid to late March, things start popping up. I mean, that's what happens in the wild. That's what happens in the gardens. And then, of course, all summer long, it's just a rotating display of interesting plants from all over the world.
Yeah, and, you're a landscape architect. I mean, I'm sure you probably go there and can draw inspiration for your own projects based on what you see, right? Being able to see that in the landscape, see it mature and kind of develop.
Yes, and one of the highlights of the gardens is their big perennial garden, which is essentially a demonstration garden for everyone to enjoy, but also learn from. And it does, it's not necessarily alpine plants in this garden. It's all the perennials that do well at 8,000 feet in the climate that Vail offers. And one of the special things about, the mountain climates is that the nights are very cool. So the plants, they call it the florist cooler climate, where the plants really get to cool off at night and they spring back, and it creates a much more vibrant color and a lot of times a much longer bloom time.
Yeah, that is true, because with the cooler parts of the day, they don't have to what we call bloom out as much. So that's definitely something that you get longer flowering periods of time. Hey, we got a question that come across, and John, you might need to help with this one here. Catherine wrote, I ordered Alpine forget-me-not seeds in error, thinking I was ordering the biennial. I realized that it's a long shot growing them in Georgia, but I thought I might as well sow instead of throwing them away. Any advice on growing these? Are you familiar with the forget-me-nots, Sarah?
Well, I haven't tried them myself. I guess what I would say is I think it might be a long shot again based on this conversation we just had about temperature.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
they do
so-
well in cooler temps.
John, do you have any other?
I was going to say it's a plant that might do better in the winter because they do like the cooler temperatures, and Georgia's not going to be that cold in the winter, so it might be a Georgia winter might be closer to a Colorado spring.
Yeah, no, it's true. You just kind of switch up the seasons on it, right?
Right. So the time to probably put in the seeds would be early fall, rather than right now. The one advantage is that some forget-me-nots can be invasive, but I don't think that she's going to have to worry about about the Alpine one becoming invasive in Georgia.
Yeah, that is true. Sarah, Betty Ford, why her for this garden?
Yeah, that's a great question. Her legacy and name really put the gardens on the map. And, of course, the Fords, during his presidency, maintained a home in Beaver Creek, right next to Vail. And it was sort of known as the Western White House. And they became very significant community members in the Vail area. And a lot of things were named for Gerald Ford in that area. And, the early garden visionaries said, well, nothing's named for Betty. Let's see if she would add her name to the gardens. And, of course, she was delighted. She was from Michigan and an avid gardener herself, and so she was delighted to sort of add her name to the gardens. But, for the gardens, I think she represents sort of a resilience that many Americans can recognize. Resiliency in the face of huge challenge, which is what she stood for. And, I think that's an applicable theme to the alpine environment even. But for the gardens, her relevance and her curiosity, it's just such a great way to position the gardens in the world, as well as honor a very wonderful individual.
Yeah, and that is one thing, with the book, is there's so much information. There's so many pictures in this book that you can't find elsewhere. And in a day where you can find everything you need to know on the internet, this book is so full of surprises, that you can't find on the internet. And I had never known about, them living up in that region and her, being an avid gardener and then to kind of learn about the environment that is there. I mean, maybe because I'm here in San Diego, but, learning about the alpine environment and these plants and, like what you said, that they're on every continent, there's some, of these plants, and they can be, taken all over the world and still do just because of where they live. So lots of great surprises in this book. How is it that you were able to narrow it down? I mean, I'm sure when you first started, you had to eliminate some of the things, right?
Yeah. There's so many stories we could have told. But what we wanted to do, many gardens have books, and they're beautiful books that tell the story of the gardens and show gorgeous photographs of what's in the gardens. And, the nature of Vail is that it has a fairly new history, and so we didn't want to spend a lot of time talking about the history of the gardens. While it's very important, what we really wanted to talk about was the importance of the message that the gardens wants to leave with its visitors, and that is about the alpine environment. And, I'll say, the current executive director has been in place for about 15 years, and she's a scientist, and she's very focused on conservation. And so conservation in light of the climate change that we are all going through at this moment, that's the big message of this book.
Yeah.
And so we chose to really focus on that and show alpine environments across the world, as well as the gardens offerings, to try to educate people about why that particular ecosystem is so important.
And if people want to get this book, where are you suggesting people go to find more information for the book?
I would highly recommend that people go to the Betty Ford Alpine Gardens website, which is bettyfordalpinegardens.org. There's a button on the homepage about the book. If you buy, in our neck of the woods, everybody's carrying it, but in other parts of the country, you'd probably have to order it, or of course you can go through Amazon.
And it's a new release, right? I mean,
Yes.
When was it released, this book?
June 29th.
Wow. That's, right in the middle of, coming out of the pandemic. You got this book out, lots of great stuff. Hey, we're going to take another break here in just a little bit. But when we get back, we're going to continue talking to Sarah Chase Shaw, the author of On the Roof of the Rocky Mountains, The Botanical Legacy of the Betty Ford Alpine Gardens. And Sarah, when we get back, I want to talk a bit more about what's in this book, because as you mentioned, this isn't just a picture book of the gardens. There's actually really great information as well. So when we get back, we'll continue talking to Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Tiger. Sarah, hang on. Going to take a quick break. Biz Talk Radio, the break's going to be a little bit longer. Those of us on Facebook Live going to be rather quick. Going to come back with Sarah, finish up our conversation. And again, there's still plenty of time. Those on Facebook Live, post your questions, your comments right there on our page. In the meantime, as Tiger mentioned, we're going to take a break. I'm Brian Main. Tiger Palafox, John Bagnasco on your Saturday. Happy weekend from Garden America. We are back, and again, just a reminder for those that are tuned in on Biz Talk Radio, this is the final segment of hour number one. You've got news coming up top of the hour, and then, of course, as always, for the past, how many years or so, second hour, 6 minutes after we return to Garden America. That is for our Biz Talk Radio listeners. In the meantime, we continue, Tiger, Sarah, and this great information, this book, and all kinds of fun things that we're finding out this morning.
Yeah, and, I think that when people see this book, they're going to think, oh, it's a picture book of a garden. And I'm sure, like, you mentioned, Sarah, they're going to think like, oh, lots of pretty pictures of the gardens and, some information about the garden. But it's so much more. You've divided it into 5 chapters, and there's actually some chapters that are just dedicated to the research that the gardens do, right?
Exactly. The last, you're right, there are 5 chapters, and we do start at the beginning in a chapter called Sowing Seeds Appropriately, which is really about the history of the gardens. And then we walk the reader through, alpine environments of the world and show everyone that, the alpine does exist all over the world, and these are some of the beautiful places and plants that you can find there. And then we take readers through the gardens on a walk through the 4 seasons in the gardens, and then specifically each collection within the gardens. And then the final chapter, which is titled Vigilance and Vision, is really about the alpine plant conservation efforts that are going on at the gardens. And, this is a small organization. I think there are 7 or 8 permanent employees, and then, of course, they have a robust internship program in the summer. But, the work that they are doing is being noticed internationally, and, they are collaborators with many national and international organizations to collect seeds and to bank those seeds for a time when perhaps some of these rare and endangered species don't exist anymore.
Yeah, and it's kind of neat to be able to see this collaboration all around the world. This isn't just something right there in that area.
Right.
And, I just want to mention again for listeners that are just joining us, we're talking about a book, On the Roof of the Rocky Mountains. And to be able to get the book, you can go to bettyfordalpinetreasures.org. Once again, bettyfordalpinetreasures.org. And all the proceeds go to supporting this organization, as we're talking with Sarah and she's telling us about. Now, what was one thing in this book, Sarah, that was kind of new to you? You know, you're creating this book and you're finding out all this information. What was something that was new to you and you found?
Well, as I said, one of the big things that I learned was that the Alpine exists all over the world, and that I'd never really thought about it in such a global spotlight. And then the other thing that I find fascinating about botanic gardens in general is that there's a statistic that about 140 million visitors annually visit botanic gardens in the U.S. and Canada. So that's North America, which is nearly as many people as attend professional sporting events combined. So, the reach of botanic gardens is very significant. And, I think people tend to believe what botanic gardens have to say because they're apolitical. They're just doing their jobs a little bit under the radar and meeting people where in a zone that is comfortable for them. I think that's the true beauty of botanic gardens in general, and that's something that was very fascinating to me.
Yeah. And this isn't your first book. Do you have anything else on the horizon right now?
Oh, there's a couple of other things cooking along, but sometimes these books just come up out of the blue, and somebody happens to be at an event, which is what happened in this case. A board member of the Gardens was at an event for another book I did, and he sort of said, "Wow, we need one of these for the Gardens to tell its story." So you just never know.
Yeah, well, great job. Wonderful book. Again, Sarah Chase Shaw, On the Roof of the Rocky Mountains, The Botanical Legacy of the Betty Ford Alpine Gardens. A great book. If you get a chance, go to, what was it again? BettyFordAlpineTreasures.org?
It's BettyFordAlpineGardens.org.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, go there, get the book. Sarah, thank you very much for joining us this weekend. Hope you have a great rest of the weekend. How's the weather looking where you're at?
Oh, my gosh, the smoke has cleared. We are loving it. It's beautiful.
Nice. Well, enjoy it. Take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, that's good stuff. Or as Johnny Carson used to say, that's good stuff.
That's interesting. We don't normally talk about alpine plants because every alpine plant I've ever tried to grow, I killed.
Well, I mean, and that was a great question that come across, to have these alpine seeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, they sometimes just they won't grow where we were. People think, they will grow in these harsh environments, but that doesn't mean they're going to grow in a good environment. They need those harsh
trying to
environments.
grow tropical plants or Mediterranean plants in Vail, Colorado is similar to it's not similar, but the same problems as trying to grow alpine plants in San Diego.
Right.
But, she was talking about the diversity of alpine plants. First of all, they're very tiny.
Yeah, that is. She was trying to say that, and it is very true, right?
Yeah, but when you get up and look at them, to me, it's mind-blowing. I mean, I think I came up close to alpine plants, well, two places. I think the first might have been in the Julian Alps, when I visited there with Bruce and Sharon Asakawa. And we were looking at some of the springtime plants, but then also at Wisley Gardens in England. They have an alpine collection, and the way that they grew them was really interesting to me because they grew them in pure gravel.
Yeah.
And because you put them in soil and they just die.
Yeah, it won't work.
So they have them in gravel, and then they have cold water running through the gravel.
Whoa.
Like melting snow would go through, right?
Yeah.
And a few nutrients in there. But you get up close and look at these things, and the flowers are just unbelievable. They rival any orchid out there.
Yeah, they had
We're going to take a break. Yeah, we're going to come back, and John's going to finish his story about Luther Burbank and the roses that he had. Didn't forget that. So those on Biz Talk Radio, news coming up, top of the hour, back at 6 minutes after. Those on Facebook Live, we're going to continue, roll right into the next segment. So questions, comments, whatever's on your mind, post them right there on our Facebook page. Along with John Begnasco, Tiger Palafox, I'm Brian Main. Quick break, a bit longer on Biz Talk Radio. Back after these messages on Biz Talk Radio. Stay with us. Those on Biz Talk Radio, we welcome you to hour number 2. It is precisely 6 minutes after, but here in San Diego, the live show, which was 1 week ago, time doesn't matter here. We just keep on rolling. It's another dimension here on Facebook Live.
It's that whole time-space continuum.
That's exactly right. Well, you and Rod Serling back in the day discussed that, and I want to hear more of those stories. Hey, prior to our guest, Sarah, John was talking about Luther Burbank, and of course I teased him about knowing him, and John said, no, but I do have some of his roses.
Well, you asked me when he lived, right?
And you said turn of the last century, right?
Right. He was born in 1849
Wow.
and died in the mid-1920s.
Okay.
So
Right,
right
fairly
around
long
then.
lifespan.
But
Yeah.
he bred all kinds of things, but one of the things he bred was a few roses, and there's a rose called Burbank,
Yes.
which is where he was from, right?
Right.
And where his home is. And another Burbank. Luther Burbank was his name.
Was his name, and they named areas after
Santa
him.
Rosa was where he was from,
Right.
and there's another rose called Santa Rosa.
And there's a Burbank up in Los Angeles.
Right, which could be named after him. Who
We
knows?
don't, we don't know.
I'm starting to get dizzy. One of my favorite stories, though, I think I've told this on the radio before, but Ralph Moore, the father of miniature roses, right?
Yes, yes.
And who lived in Visalia, and we had Burling Leong, his propagator, on the radio a couple weeks ago,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
They had a series of great rosarians at the Huntington Library, and they would invite people from all over the world to speak. And I was there one year when Ralph Moore spoke. He was, I think, like 96 at the time.
Oh, wow.
And it was fascinating. I could tell all kinds of stories about him. But later on, I talked to Tom Caruth, who's the curator of the Rose Garden at the Huntington. And he said that he had a rose he was trying to identify, and he thought Ralph would be able to help him with it. And the rose that he was trying to identify was Luther Burbank's Santa Rosa.
Oh.
And so he brought Ralph over, showed him the rose, and he goes, "Do you think this rose is Santa Rosa?" And Ralph looked at it and turned his head, looked at it, closer. He says, it could be Santa Rosa, but if it is, it's not the same one that Luther gave me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, well, 96, that would have made sense
Yeah.
at the time. And then Kathy says Luther Burbank's gardens in Santa Rosa, very nice.
Yeah.
They are. His paradox walnut tree is there, which is a
Paradox walnut tree.
Kind of sounds like a flux capacitor or something.
It does, doesn't it? Flux capacitor rose.
you takes you into a whole nother.
He has a
Timeline?
series. He wrote a series of books on plants, a little like Encyclopedium and Encyclopedia, ENCYCLOPEDIA. Right?
Yes, and I'm sure you have that book in your library.
I have one of them. I think it's Breeding Plants, one of the volumes. I don't have all of them. I forget how many volumes there are.
Speaking of books, guess what came in the mail for me this week, John? We talked about it. I think it was last week. Yeah.
A book that you ordered from Amazon?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. One was The Orchid Thief. I'm gonna read that finally.
Does he get? They capture him, right? Does he get caught?
I haven't
Well,
read
I don't want to. Don't spoil it. You haven't read the book yet.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other one was The World Is My Garden.
Oh, you got
I
that?
got it, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
now that you will like. I
Yeah.
don't know about the orchid thief. I mean, if you know a little bit about orchids, you'll probably like it.
Yeah,
Uh,
but
and
yeah,
knowing the
so-
industry, you'll like it.
I'm sorry, Joe, we have such smart viewers and listeners. Here's Millie. Burbank in L.A. County is named after David Burbank, a dentist from New Hampshire.
Look at that. You would think,
Wow.
yeah, Luther Burbank, but no, really.
Yeah, you know what? Hey, if those on Facebook Live, just contribute anything you want. You got, even if it's random.
Yeah.
Well,
You know-
my thought was it was either Luther or David, one of the two.
Yeah, but you were toss up between the two.
Do you even know David?
And then Carla thanks you, John.
Not
just
at
above
all.
that, Carla's thanking John.
About what?
About your
Well, she joined our show late today,
extensive
but thanking
knowledge
you
of-
for telling her the name of the plant in the newsletter.
Oh,
She had to take a guess from the plant tag.
Oh, she had, this was a really popular plant during the houseplant craze, and I haven't seen it for a while, but, now with houseplants again, maybe you
Yeah.
guys are selling it. And it was an Apicia, the flame violet.
mm-hmm.
Are those popular again or no?
I have not seen them much. No, I have not. So that was popular during your houseplant craze. Yeah,
During
the,
my-
the,
Back
the
in the
first,
70s.
the first houseplant craze.
The
No,
first go-round.
The first one was in Victorian times.
No,
You know, now I'll tell you something, Tiger. Houseplants may be coming back in vogue,
yeah,
but what is not coming back are the colors people used to paint their houses. Avocado green
Ugh,
and that
right?
orange, John, wasn't there kind of an orange?
Orange.
Orange,
Like a peachy,
orange,
like a
Not,
peachy,
yeah.
not in
Avo-
Michigan.
avocado green. Yeah, those were pretty prevalent back then.
yeah.
You know, my mother, you know what she did back in the 60s and 70s? Remember, John, Tiger, the back in the 60s, those big flowers? If you think of Laugh-In, the show, and they had those big flowers on everything, she got a hold of some of those. They were like, you peel off and
stickers.
stick them.
They're stickers.
And she stuck them all over the kitchen.
Yeah,
I'm like, Mom, aren't you a
That was
little old
the
for
thing.
that? But I guess it was like, hey, that's the thing.
yeah,
You know, had them all over our kitchen.
right. The flower power stickers.
Yeah, exactly. Flower pound. Look at Tiger telling us what it was about.
We're telling, yeah,
Hey, you know what I
Yeah,
was
explain
just
it to
you
you,
what it
Brian.
was about.
I was just thinking, talking about Carla's Apicia, one of the most coveted plants back in the late 60s, early 70s
Thou shalt not covet.
was an Apicia called pink brocade. And if you Google that, it has the colors that the $10,000 plants are going for today. And I kind of wonder, that might be easier to grow. I wonder if people are planting that again.
Huh.
Apicias are gesneriads. And gesneriads are the African violet family. And some of those are, this particular one, pink brocade, was almost impossible to grow. It was really difficult. But it had the bubblegum pink colors in it, in the leaves.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, does it show up on,
Yeah, well, I'm finding a couple of them, and they're probably new ones of that.
maybe some that are easier to grow?
Yeah, like Pink Dreams, and Pink. Yeah.
If I ever have a chance, I might get into gesneriads again. I grew a bunch in Michigan, but
It's funny
yeah.
because it has almost, and it might be just the photo, but it's got this beautiful green and reddish foliage, but then the flower almost looks orange. Like it's in contrast to the foliage.
Most Apicias are orange.
Yeah.
There are some that are pink, but most are orange. But the pink brocade the leaves were that hot pink.
Yeah.
Yeah, that fluorescent pink.
Hey, so here's a random question for John, because John said, I'm going to try to grow them again. I used to grow them in Michigan. Are there any plants that you could grow in Michigan that you can't grow out here?
Yeah. Dozens and dozens and dozens.
And I assume climate would be the difference, or what would be the reason? Because I would think that out here we grow almost everything just based on the weather.
Yeah, but like what we're talking about.
Well,
with
everything
the
that
interview.
requires a cold, alpines, you might grow some alpines in Michigan, but you can't grow them here.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
And a lot of deciduous trees, maples won't grow in Southern California.
Don't we have-
Aspens
well,
won't
you know
grow.
what? Speaking of aspens, when I went to school in Flagstaff up in northern Arizona,
Yeah.
every year in the fall we would go up and look at the aspens.
Yeah.
They were beautiful.
Beautiful.
I said,
Reds
we're
and
doing what? We're
yellows
going to
and
go up and
oranges.
look at the aspens. I'm like, why? Just come with us. It was
And-
back before I had an appreciation.
And it's so neat. Those areas are where you get those difference in textures and colors. Because you can have the blue of different spruces and cedars, and then you can have the green of different pines and other varieties of tree, and then you got the deciduous trees, which if you go during the right time of year, oranges, yellows, reds.
You don't think a maple tree could grow like inland, like in Alpine here, the higher elevations?
A maple, like a real maple or a Japanese maple?
Probably Japanese, because when I lived in Alpine,
Oh,
I
Japanese
had,
maples would grow.
I
but
had a
yes.
Japanese maple. Okay.
Yeah, no, they would
Yeah.
grow. A Japanese maple would grow in the mountains areas of California.
And I think it's funny for those people that don't live in San Diego. We've talked about two things today. We've talked about the Alpine. We've talked about the Julian Alps, which you mentioned, John. And here in San Diego, we have a community called Alpine and a community
Julian.
called Julian. So while your head explodes after that comment, we're going to take a break and come back here on Facebook Live and Biz Talk Radio. More of your questions, more of your comments here on Garden America. Having too much fun today. That's what's going on. Hey, good afternoon to our friends on the East Coast, or maybe early morning if you're, catching us via streaming someplace in the world. Welcome to Garden America, your plant authority. We are your plant authority.
Yes. Although
It never says that anywhere. It doesn't say it on our website or our Facebook page, but I assume we are your plant authority.
And if you listen to us regularly, you know that we are your music authority as well, right?
And that leads to a list of songs that you came across.
Yes, exactly. I was very busy this week developing this, doing a poll of our 1,000 Garden America listeners, and
By the way, thank you for polling our listeners and our viewers.
spent a lot of time on this and created a playlist. This is a gardening playlist. Okay?
Gardening playlist.
Yeah. Number one song for garden lovers is Dreams from Fleetwood Mac.
Okay, and you're
Yeah.
welcome on Facebook Live to comment on any of these songs or your
Number
own songs.
two, Brown Eyed Girl.
Van Morrison.
Now, these songs were from a poll that
Yeah.
actually. Are you going to explain that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't want to steal your thunder.
So we got Brown Eyed Girl by Van Morrison,
Mr. Blue Sky by Electric
Electric Light Orchestra, Jeff Lynne.
Bloom, the Paper Kites.
We don't know that one.
No. Landslide, Fleetwood Mac on
Again.
there too. Two
Both
in the
Stevie
top
Nicks
five.
songs, John.
Yeah. Here Comes the Sun makes perfect sense. From
Beatles,
the Beatles.
George Harrison. Yep.
Okay. Walking on Sunshine, another. That's a
Right.
good
Okay,
song,
all
right? Africa from Toto. That one's kind of threw me.
Explain
I don't,
that one.
I don't understand that.
Rain. You need rain to grow plants, right?
That's true.
All right,
Plus
I'll
the
buy
rains
that.
down in Africa.
All right.
Good job, John.
Very good, John.
Wildflowers from Tom Petty, and Fast Car, Tracy Chapman. Which again, that one throws me for a loop. I'm trying to think this song in my head, and it's like, who's gonna?
Now,
So
what about
do you agree or do you have your
what
own?
about the Rose from Bette Midler?
Really
Yeah,
slow song, man. That I tell you
That's
what,
kind of a depressing one.
that's very slow.
And it's
So-
also not horticulturally correct. I really,
Yeah, they
I
blew.
really dislike
They
that.
blew it on that end, didn't
Yeah,
they?
she's talking about a seed that becomes the rose in the spring. That's not the way roses grow.
No, well, the person that wrote the song had
Oh,
no idea.
John's like a guy or a gal in the military, and then they go watch a military movie and how they can pick out all the things wrong.
All the things wrong. Right, exactly. I do the same thing with movies. I pick out a lot of mistakes. I go, well, hold on. If that was there, then why is that there now, and why is he saying that?
You should
And
be
then
an
here's the
editor.
comment I get. Just a movie. Just relax and enjoy
Go
it.
with it.
Hey, back to your education, Brian.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Linda says that she's guessing deciduous shrubs like lilacs don't do well in San Diego.
Correct.
Yeah, that
And
would be.
she's correct, except in the 1940s, Dr. Walter Lammerts at Descanso Gardens bred the lilac Syringa vulgaris with another species called Syringa hyacinthiflora. which was a lower chill variety, and came up with the Descanso hybrid lilacs.
Yeah.
The most common in San Diego is Lavender Lady, but they do very well in San Diego. So Southern California, if you want to grow lilacs, you can, but you need the Descanso hybrids or the low chill varieties.
And we have a lot of microclimates here in San Diego as well. When you start at the beach and go to the coast, go to the mountains, go to the desert,
Oh, yeah.
not many places are that diverse.
Right. Yeah, and certain groups of plants like palms, just in San Diego County, will grow well in one area of San Diego County, but not in another area of San Diego County.
Since I'm such a palm lover, give me an example of an area that's just not going to grow palms.
Well, they can grow palms. It's just they won't do as well. For instance, the king palm does really well along the coast,
Okay. Yeah.
but not so well inland.
And you don't even have to go that far inland. Like,
Right.
I mean, you can drive 20 minutes and they don't do well.
What is it about the coast? Is it the heat? Is it because I know the coast you're going to get a lot of wind and that kind of thing.
No, it's the cooler climate. The sun will burn the leaves on the king palms, where on the coast that's not going to happen.
Which is why my queen palms are doing so well in my patio.
Now queen palms do
And that's
well
because they're a
everywhere.
weed.
You, like John says, I give Brian my weeds. I have two outstanding weeds at 20 feet tall in my patio, thanks to
Exactly.
John. That look great. And the other weed was the ficus. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, back to Linda's comment on deciduous shrubs, she is true that a lot of the flowering shrubs that are deciduous aren't grown that much here in California, Southern California especially, because part of the reason is even though some of them will grow, we like plants that are evergreen.
Mm-hmm.
And we have so many flowering plants that are evergreen, we don't plant the ones that aren't. Like spirea. You know, you can grow spirea here.
Right.
They just don't do that well.
It's not a common one because you can grow a hibiscus, which has flowers year round and has foliage year round.
Pretty much,
You
right?
know, yeah. So when you're restricted in places that like that's how you get your flowers. I mean, bulbs are so popular in the mountains in those cold regions
Because it's cold,
that's how
obviously,
they
yes.
get the flowers.
And there are a lot of alpine bulbs, too.
Yeah, really cool ones. I mean, like you say, that a lot of them are compact, but when you really look at them in detail, how neat they are, and
You could
and where they
probably just
grow.
Google alpine plants
Yeah.
and see a lot of different things. You know what's interesting is Sarah had mentioned Edelweiss,
Mm-hmm.
which I told you I had 3 semesters of first semester German.
No, I'm just thinking
Yeah,
you as
so-
a Latin boy around here.
No, 3 semesters of first semester. Sure.
Right. And got the same grade all 3 semesters.
I just think of the song, Edelweiss, that
Well,
song.
So anyway, because of my German, I knew that Weiss meant white. And I always thought, I don't know why.
White flower?
Yeah, I just thought Edel was flower, so white flower. But I have a rose that I got. Don't need to go into the history of how I got this, but the rose is called Edel, Edel, right? So I thought, well,
What does that mean?
yeah, why would you call a rose flower?
Flower.
Right. So I looked it up, and Edel means noble. So Edelweiss is white noble or the noble white flower. And
That
this
explains you
particular
taking
rose
that
is
class for 3 times. It took you later on in life to figure that out.
It's what, 50 years.
Well, I just learned something. That's good to know next time I hear the
So
song.
Yeah,
Is that the sound of music?
noble.
They sang that in the
Yes.
sound of music, yeah.
It was in the sound of music. Christopher Plummer just died last year, right?
Yes. My wife had a crush on him from childhood.
Really?
Yeah,
Which
to
one-
this day.
Which one is he?
He was the Von Trapp. He was the guy
dad?
that, the dad,
He was
yeah.
the dad?
Yeah.
His last movie he did a really good job in. It was the color of money.
No, that was
The color
Way
of money?
before
Wasn't
that,
like
right?
Robert De Niro or something?
The color of.
No, someone on Facebook's going to tell us.
What was the movie that they just made a few years ago that was about Getty, J. Paul Getty?
You know what? I know that Christopher Plummer was in a movie before he died, just before he died,
Yeah.
a few years ago. I don't know the name of the movie. But I'm guessing our listeners do,
Yes.
our viewers. If you're on
Viewers,
BizTalk
listeners.
Radio, too late. That was last week.
Well, I can Google it because Oh, All the Money in the World.
Oh, okay.
That was
okay.
the name of it. Okay. Interesting movie. It was a true story. You know, it was about it was his nephew got his ear cut off
Yeah, that is a true story. Yes.
and mailed to
Well, they held him for ransom.
yeah, and then they and J. Paul Getty wouldn't pay the ransom because he was a tightwad, and so they cut off his nephew's ear and sent it to him in the mail and said, "We're going to start cutting off a different piece every week and sending it to you."
Scary.
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to take a break, and let's see, our next segment's going to be a lot longer, over 10 minutes. Plenty of time for people to get those questions, those comments,
Start lining
those
them
cards and letters to us. So again, here on Garden America, whatever's on your mind, random thoughts, go ahead and post it right there. You know, you get information on movies, we'll take that. You've got information, answers on music, we'll take that. Or horticulture as well. Brian Main, John Bagnasco, Tiger Palafox, thank you for tuning in on this edition of Garden America. We return here on Garden America from our break, a shorter break on Facebook Live. In the meantime, John is going to research a few things here that we've said to make sure that we're
February.
in line. Are we right with what you said?
February.
He died in February.
Right.
So, Carla, we're sorry to hear about that. Carla says, It makes me sad. I loved Christopher Plummer, as my wife does and still does, for that matter.
Hey, so I brought in a couple plants for
Oh yeah, these
John
are
and Brian.
awesome.
Yes,
today.
you did.
And here, I'll try to zoom in on the one right there in the middle for John's. But it's a pepper. It's kind of like a bell pepper called candy cane, and I like it because it has a variegated foliage to the leaf. The pepper is variegated too, with green and like a light cream and a red. And, you know, because they're kind of a bell pepper, you know, they're not bell pepper in the shape of the square bell peppers, but they're
Right.
kind of more jalapeno-shaped bell peppers.
That's exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, like a
Jalapeno
real
pepper.
big jalapeno.
You didn't get a close-up of that, did you?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, don't
I'm
worry. Just
trying.
take his word for it.
But
Believe us.
yeah, no, I just thought it's a fun
You wanna
pepper, and
put it over there.
yeah, I'll move it, or yeah, you can hand me yours,
yeah.
and then you know, the cool thing about peppers is, aside from getting you a fruit, a vegetable off of it, that
Yeah, there you go.
We're
they
gonna
they
say
also
a
are kind
fruit.
of like
they are fruits.
yeah. Is it a fruit or vegetable? Pepper,
They're fruits.
fruit. And
It's like the old tomato question.
yeah, and but they make really neat plants, like shrub plants too.
Right.
You know, for you being in your patio, you could have a pepper all the time, meaning there will always grow for
Right.
you in pots. For John, I mean, they should be able to overwinter
Yeah.
quite a few years. I mean, the
Right.
winter isn't so much the hard, you know, part of it up there for you. It's kind of like, you know, being out there in the dry area. You would need it to be in an area that gets good water, right?
Yeah, I guess.
No, not
Well,
much water.
kind of. I was still back to or thinking about you calling it a vegetable instead of a fruit.
Yeah.
The way you tell whether a plant is or something you're eating is a vegetable or a fruit,
Yeah, how do we tell?
if there's seeds inside of it, it's a fruit.
Yeah, inside.
Right. However,
Okay.
the
all right.
Supreme Court ruled that the tomato is a vegetable.
Right.
They did.
That was
How
just
do they-
last year,
what do you
I
mean
think,
they
right?
ruled on that? What are you talking about?
Yeah, that was
They
just last
ruled-
year,
What,
I
that,
think.
what, it's,
No,
a,
it
it's a
wasn't
law
last
now?
year.
No?
It's a law that if you
Yeah.
if you
It
call
was-
it something else, you're breaking the law.
Yeah, it was determined that because why did they
Boy.
it had to do with like import export of fruit vegetables, and they needed to classify it or
Yeah,
something.
yada yada yada.
And so they yeah, even though it doesn't make sense, they classified it as that.
Let's get back to my comment in the hallway when we were coming into the studio this morning that the leaves to me look like ficus leaves to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah, they can. And with the variegation, I think, like you say, they look a lot like a variegated ficus
Variegated,
plant.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
But,
this will be nice to taste. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, there's lots of peppers already on the plant too, so you're good to go.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. Adding it to my collection of my 2 tomato plants and my other pepper, which we're harvesting like every day. We're picking fruit.
By
and
the way,
vegetables.
the case that we were referring to is Nix versus Hedden,
Mhm.
when the Supreme Court ruled that the tomato was a fruit or a vegetable. I'm sorry.
Nix versus Hedden.
Yeah, Knicks versus Hedden.
Who won? Did Hedden win?
Well, it was in Tiger. What year did you think
I thought
it
it
was?
was like last year. I feel like I had just heard about it.
And what year would you guess?
Well, I guess that was back in the 80s.
The 1880s.
1880s, right?
No, it's actually 1893.
Oh.
No, I was off by a couple of years.
Yeah.
For some reason, I felt like I just heard about that recently, and it
Well,
just happened.
First of all, it's very possible you just heard about
That
it,
is true.
right?
Yeah.
Second of all, our school system can be very slow sometimes.
But one thing millennials need to know is just because they just heard of something doesn't mean it just
Just
happened.
But why? Does it say why they did that?
Yeah, it had to do. You were right. It had to do with importing and export. It's
Yeah.
importing export.
Yeah.
Import export. I mean the import
I
export.
mean the
business.
import-export business.
Right.
Yeah.
There's always a Seinfeld reference. You can't go a show without a Seinfeld.
Without a Seinfeld
Right.
reference.
Oh.
Just like holes. John's got a problem with his holes this morning at home, and that being a Seinfeld reference to an outlet. You went to
Right.
plug your TV in, and there's no juice.
Right. Outlet. What's that? Hole. Oh,
Oh,
you
yeah,
mean
the
the
holes.
holes? That was the electrician.
And of all the outlets, it's your TV. And I assume it's a big screen TV that you bought,
Yeah.
The
And-
biggest.
and you
Not the biggest.
and you can't
But it
watch
was bigger than anyone I've ever had.
55-inch.
72, I think.
What?
Yeah.
Jeez, you need to sit 2 rooms away to watch that.
Good for you.
You can watch it from the kitchen
Yeah.
and still be too close.
Your neighbors down the road can watch it.
Exactly.
What are you looking at in those binoculars? I'm watching the Bagnasco's TV set.
You don't need binoculars.
Oh.
All right. So anyway, back to this pepper.
Candy cane
There's
pepper.
also I think we might have talked about this before. There's another pepper with variegated leaves
Fish pepper?
called the fish pepper, but that one is hot.
Yeah. Spicy pepper.
It's spicy, and this one here is, you said, tastes just like a regular bell pepper.
Yeah.
Sweet.
It's not super sweet, but it is like a green or red bell pepper. So not, I wouldn't say as sweet as like a golden,
Mm-hmm.
but a green or red or green pepper.
Good for a salad. How about that, right?
Oh, excellent for salad.
So anybody in San Diego could just go to Mission Hills Nursery and buy one?
Yeah, and they're actually on sale right now because we've got these and then another hot pepper called Mad Hatter, which is a squashed little
Oh, I don't know
pepper.
about that.
Yeah.
You mean like a habanero?
Not as hot as a habanero, but kind of like looks like one.
Right, that's what I
Yeah.
meant.
And we have those and we just really found they were unique varieties out of the standard jalapeno habanero peppers, and so we have them at the nursery and they're on sale right now. So people, it's buy one get one, I think, right now.
I'll wait till I bring this home. What do you got there? It's like like a kid bringing dogs home. Stray dogs.
You just sneak it into the patio.
Well, see, because it's a pepper, she'll love it.
Oh, yeah.
Dana will love it. Yeah,
That's fun.
it is fun. Okay, what else is going on out there?
Carla wanted to let you know that this is going to be her last comment.
And I said, comment all you want.
Yeah.
You're not bugging
No,
us.
don't.
You're part of the show, people. Remember that.
But she said she's growing the candy cane peppers also in
Ooh.
Huntington Beach. She
Nice.
loves it.
Nice. Yeah, that's a fun one. So
Now, the coast is a great location for peppers because you don't have to worry about sunburn
no,
during the summer.
but they
Yikes.
do come on a little later, sometimes because they need that heat.
Yeah.
And along the coast, you don't always get that till later in the year. But that's the nice thing is that you get it all the way into the fall, so it's a really long-lasting, harvest for the peppers as well.
So John and I'm into the 90s every day.
yeah, you
really
guys,
hot.
you guys have really perfect pepper growing temperatures for sure.
Yeah. Our temperatures are supposed to be cooler this week, back into the high 80s.
Back into the high 80s.
Yeah. Which is really better
Yeah.
because I'm watering every day 1,300 roses in containers.
You need to come up with a better system. You really do.
Yeah, I do.
I mean, something automatic that would just take care of that.
I wish there was something automatic to take care of the ground squirrels.
You know who you should reach out to?
Oh.
There's a company that is advertising a sprinkler. And I maybe our listeners are aware of this, but it's on my social media feed all the time because obviously what I search all the time. And it's a sprinkler that you can set. It's just a one-stream sprinkler.
The motion activated one?
No, it's not motion activated. It's a one stream sprinkler
Mhm.
that you put in you're supposed to put in one corner of your grass, okay? And you draw out where your grass is,
Mhm.
and it's a stream of water from this one spot, and it just waters the whole lawn. Do you
What?
get what I'm saying? So it's like you standing in one spot with a hose,
Right.
and then watering your whole lawn,
Yeah.
being able to do that. And it's a stream, and it knows by the app and the setting. So what you could do is put it somewhere in your roses, draw out your bed of roses, and it would, in theory, just water exactly where the roses are.
Yeah, but
kind
if
of a
it's
thing.
one stream and he has a wide
No, but that's
swath-
the thing. The stream moves,
Okay.
and it waters every inch of this area, but you set where it waters. So, like, if you don't have any roses over here, you just block out that section. It doesn't water there, and then it waters to the left of it or something. Yeah,
Worth a
we
shot.
we should check it out. Maybe there'll be a show sponsor too.
Suppose you have a 20-foot run of roses. How do you get past the first 19 feet to get the one at the end?
It shoots over. It changes the angle in the arc. I don't know. I watched a video on it. It seemed pretty good. Pretty good. I don't know how well it works, but
I'm skeptical.
I am too. But that's why I want you to try it.
Yeah, you try it, experiment with it, take videos, and come back and report.
Yeah.
Hey, Lila wants to know if her tomatoes have stopped producing because of the heat. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they
Wha-
could start again.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. For the fall,
Mhm.
they'll start setting again. But
We're going to take a break.
All right.
One more segment.
Always cutting off John.
John, I know. Well, you know what? John has a lot to say. We're just playing the odds here. One more segment here on Facebook Live and Biz Talk Radio. Stay with us as we continue with Garden America. All right, it is that time, our final segment. We are back with our final segment on your Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon here on Biz Talk Radio, Facebook Live. It is Garden America. Tiger says we have 6,000 followers on Facebook. We need to go to 10,000. That'll be our goal. So tell your friends and your family to follow us on Facebook Live and up the ante just a bit, if you would. We do appreciate that. Those on Biz Talk Radio listening, our Facebook page is Garden America Radio, which means you can also go to that page, watch and listen live every Saturday. We kick things off at 8:06 on the Pacific Coast, Eastern Time Zone, 11:06.
I'm so glad you know all these time zones. When I call for the guests for the interviews,
Yes.
and I always ask them, I'm like, where are you located? And they always tell me other parts
Right.
of the country. And
So like today, she's on Mountain Time, I would assume.
yeah,
That would have been an hour ahead of us.
ahead of us.
And then Central Time,
And
2
I
hours.
never know what that means. So they'll tell me, oh, I'm in Michigan. And I'm like, oh, what time is it in Michigan?
I'm an expert in geography. Ask me anything. That's how I knew the whole latitude thing with the Mediterranean.
I can see Tiger being confused because there are 4 time zones.
Yeah.
So learning 4 of them would be
And then
difficult.
you got to factor in we're in California where there's that whole daylight savings, and not everybody
Right.
has daylight savings.
Indiana, Arizona, Hawaii, I think.
They don't have daylight savings.
They don't.
Well, Hawaii
Indiana,
doesn't need it.
Yeah, well, the Indiana, it's just a part. It like just a
Just
portion
a
of the state.
portion, portion
you
of
could
it?
go, like you could go across the street, and it's a
And
different
it's
time.
A different time.
Now, when you're ready, we'll get into the whole international date line. That'll really blow
When
your
you're
mind.
ready. I'll let you know when I'm ready to find out more information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a millennial thing?
What? Not
Met-
knowing time zones?
Right.
I think it's just a me thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was curious because in England they found out that I think it was 60% of the school students could not read a clock.
Oh, let me tell you, when Dana used to work at the front desk at a radio station,
Uh-huh.
somebody would come in and ask the time, and she would point to the clock, and no, I can't read that. What time is it?
Really?
Because they live in a digital world.
Well, they solved it in England.
What they do in England?
They took all the clocks out and just replaced them with digital clocks.
Oh, that's good. Instead of teaching somebody something, just say, well, here's an easier way for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Good golly. This world is being so dumbed down.
Yeah. I was just wondering how many millennials would ever say "good golly."
How about good golly, Miss Molly? To quote Little Richard. Who's Little Richard?
Is he related to Big Richard? I'm looking for that sprinkler. Sorry.
Oh, to show John?
Yeah.
You know what? If it's not too much of an investment, I would do it.
Yeah.
You probably on your phone, right? You set it up on your phone?
Yeah, you set it up on your phone. And again, I just watched the video, so I'm not too informed.
So, okay, so here's what I'm
on it.
thinking about. Your roses are in pots, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
They're in rows.
you have to, it has to go right precisely.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
And then how long
I'll
does it-
just say right now it's impossible.
How about it, though, if it dropped a heavy stream or like a heavy mist? That'd be
No,
pretty heavy.
it would be it's a stream, and it shoots it, and you're supposed to be able to
Like a little kid.
program where it goes.
I know,
so.
but I can see John's concern here about getting exactly into every pot.
Yeah.
I think John's concern is that he doesn't want to lose one rose on a chance of something.
Well, he's not gonna. It's not gonna be like once he sets it up, that's it. If it
Just
doesn't
walks
work,
away. He's like, "Oh, Tiger said this will work."
What if it did? What
I
if it
trust,
did like more
he
than
doesn't
half of
trust
them?
me that he doesn't trust me that much.
What if it did like more than half of them? And you said, okay, now I just have to worry about 600.
What about if I just finish my grading and plant them in the ground? And
You don't
not
want
have
to do
to
that.
worry
You're
about
going
it.
to
Solve
lose
a lot of problems.
No, he's going to lose a lot of them to gophers. Then I was just at a client's house today,
Terrible.
this week, and she's like, "What's wrong with this rose?" And I looked at it, just singed, just absolutely singed. And I looked right at the base of it. I saw a hole. I just took my foot, kicked it. The whole rose just fell
Right over. Too
And
much
I'm like,
water?
No, gnaw marks from a gopher.
Oh,
Looked like a beaver ate it.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Just
I've
you could
had-
see the bottom just.
I've had that happen to maybe 5 or 6 roses, and every single one of them I saved.
Yeah, she asked me, and I was like, "You can."
I mean, there
Like-
wasn't a root left,
Yeah.
but I cut them all back to like about 6 inches, stuck them in pots, and they all re-rooted.
Did you just use potting soil? Or did you
Yeah.
use like
No, I
a
just
heavy
used
draining
potting soil.
regular potting soil?
Yeah.
And they rooted out from
from
the nub that it was
Yeah.
left with.
yeah,
Really?
yeah, and,
And-
I'm
and
not
did-
kidding. There wasn't a single root left.
Do you have to keep that potting soil damp, or do you want it to dry between waterings?
No, I don't know if you'd want it to dry between, but
But keep it.
you wouldn't
damp.
keep it soggy.
No, you're not keeping it soggy, but keep it
Right.
damp
Right.
where it's humid environment, and then
And it
it'll
might
just
be the
start
time of
growing.
year too. If it's spring or fall, it might make a difference. Might be easier
Yeah,
to
she
save.
she was heartbroken, and I'm like, it was like an iceberg. I'm like, don't worry, like you can get another one.
Tiger's like, I probably have a couple in my
Yeah,
pocket.
yeah,
Here.
exactly.
Here, plant
But
this.
she was like heartbroken, and I was just like,
You know what,
okay.
though? Because she's passionate.
Yeah,
She cares. Those are her
And that's-
babies.
Well, you
Yeah.
know, my sons, both my sons are in the tree trimming business, and they went out to a client's 2 weeks ago, who had a tree that they wanted. They said it was some type of rare oak, and they wanted it pruned, and it was leaning, and they wanted it pushed back up, staked back up, and saved. And my son said, well, I can do this, but you're going to have to get rid of the gophers here first, because gophers are eating it.
Because the same thing will happen.
Right. So they did stake it up, and they said, but, we'll be back in 2 weeks to trim. 2 weeks later, they went, and the tree was
gone.
dead. I mean, the
Because
gopher.
people didn't do what they asked
yeah,
them to
he
do.
said, they said, no point pruning it now. It's just,
Easy prune now.
it's
See, people
dead.
don't. A lot of people like, oh, we got to worry about gophers now. The tree, I don't know.
Well, gophers are difficult for most people, and that's why I just tell people, I'm like, just find a service that'll take care of them, because you've got 3 basic things for gophers. You can trap them,
Right.
you can bait them, and you can bomb them or flood them,
or as we call blast them.
Yeah, blast them. Those are your 3 basic things. Trapping involves involves you having to maintain traps. Go out there, check them, pull them up, dig them
Right.
up, place the trap in the
It's
tunnel.
a lot of maintenance.
It's difficult
Yeah.
for most people. Baiting, a lot of people don't like to do that, because if they have animals,
Secondary kill.
I hope none of our sponsors are upset, but like a lot of the baits on the market out there aren't really that effective, because they can't have that secondary poisoning aspect.
Exactly.
Meaning, like, if a gopher eats this and then a hawk eats the gopher,
And the hawk-
they don't want the hawk to die from strychnine or
Yeah,
something.
but we got to hurry up here.
Yeah.
Gophers are usually solitary creatures, though, right?
Once you get rid of them,
Yeah.
you know, you can stay out of them. But it's just a difficult thing for most people to do. So I'm just like, why not just hire a company to come in here and trap and bait them, whatever it is they do for you, and you can usually get rid of them real quick.
Right.
You know, that's not usually a problem to get rid of them.
And that's how we're going to end the show on Tiger's advice about getting rid of gophers. Thank you for tuning in on Biz Talk Radio, listening to our pre-recorded shows. Thank you for being right there and live on Facebook Live. A lot of people this morning tuned in. I want to thank Sarah for being on our show today. For the entire crew, I'm Brian Main, Tiger Palafox, and of course, John Bagnasco. He's always got a lot to say, which is why I've got to cut him off more than I want to. We're going to be back next week with more great gardening information. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Be safe. And until next week, what do we say, John? Get growing America.
Get growing, America.
Wow. Take care. Bye.
Bye.